have been waiting all week for this interview with Lauren George. It is a topic that I don't believe we have had on the Fitness Business Podcast yet. Now, I know it's a little trendy, it's kind of something new, but it's also something exciting. So I couldn't think of a better guest to bring on the Fitness Business Podcast than fitness program creator and business mentor, Lauren George. Lauren, welcome to the Fitness Business Podcast.
Thank you, Dory. I'm so excited to be here, and this is such a fun topic to discuss.
It is a fun topic, but before we dive in, I feel like I left out your most important title, and that is Fitness Business Podcast Fanatic.
That's right, I was.
You did such a great job. Your group that you were in, we do these little groups where we bring on about 5-6 of our FBP listeners. And for 3 months, you're kind of like an awesome advocate for us. Sometimes you take over our, you've taken over our social media for us. So great to have you on the show. You did actually I think we did a live Facebook event together.
We did. I believe it was a panel on group fitness programming.
Yeah, a good old Ellen DeWard. She was with us.
Yes.
And was Shannon Fable also? Was she on that panel as well?
I believe so. And Stacey Aldine, or maybe we did a different. Stacey and I did another episode with you on training and mentoring group fitness instructors.
Well, listen, they're all ex guests on the Fitness Business.
Yes.
Podcast, so it's awesome. All right. Well, I brought you on today to talk about this trendy new topic, which is hosting and planning fitness retreats. I have no experience of all my years of group fitness. I don't have any experience at this, but I know all of our listeners out there, they've heard of these yoga retreats and, these group fitness retreats. And I'm excited to have you come on and talk a little bit more about it and educate our listeners out there. So to start off with our first question, what do you think the benefits of hosting a retreat, kind of like as a studio owner or even an independent fitness professional? What are the benefits?
Yes, and I think that's honestly one of the questions that you should ask yourself before you go into hosting a retreat is like, what are you hoping to accomplish? But there are a lot of different benefits or a lot of different, potential outcomes from various kinds of retreats. So the first one, which I feel like is the most obvious, is as a revenue generator, right? You're charging for people to come to your retreat. Depending on how you structure it, it can be a revenue generator. It can also be an amazing way to build community within your studio or gym. So maybe it's something you offer once a year for everyone who is a member, or every 6 months, or even, a really fun trip that members can take together. So it's a great way to build community. It's a great way to build brand loyalty as a studio, a gym owner, or as an independent fitness professional in your area or nationwide if you have a larger following. And then also to establish yourself as an authority in the industry, and especially in your niche if you're doing a themed retreat. So it can be a great way to kind of share the information that you're passionate about with others, maybe that live close to you or maybe that don't, and you all travel to a specific location.
The camaraderie that you must walk away with after doing a fitness retreat has to be off the charts.
It is. It's truly amazing. And you come in maybe barely knowing anyone or not knowing them at all. Or maybe you go to the studio with them all the time, but you don't really know past like their name and their kids' names. And then you walk away with this amazing friendship and better understanding. So it can be an amazing experience.
You spoke last week when we had you on advertising for this episode. You mentioned about self-care. You recommended a book that was kind of that talks about like just checking in with yourself, making sure all is good. And I feel like this is a perfect way doing a fitness retreat to check in with yourself, whether you're male or female.
It can be. It's hard to turn life off, right? So getting away from it and having time to focus on yourself or a specific, fitness goal can really, really be a fantastic way, for self-care in this world where we go, and you may be, trying to do yoga at home or at the studio, and it's easy to get distracted. So it is a great way to kind of reset, regenerate, take some time for you.
I mentioned earlier about yoga retreats. That's probably the most popular retreat that I hear about I'd love to hear just your advice on different types of retreats that you can host or a fitness professional can host.
Well, I think that's what is so exciting right now, and especially as we're discussing it, we have a lot of different types of fitness professionals that listen to the Fitness Business Podcast, and there truly are so many different types of retreats. So, like you said, most people think of like a yoga retreat in Bali, which does sound fabulous, but there could be lots of different themes for retreats. So you could have bar, Pilates, it could be hiking, it could be like having a certain health focus in mind. So maybe you are immersing yourself in a retreat to kind of reset your habits and establish healthy habits. So they have retreats where you go through different fitness programmings every day. You learn how to put a fitness routine together. You're eating healthy while you're there. So kind of as a reset for your habits. There's also results driven retreats. So a retreat focused on a really specific outcome like weight loss or stress management or learning a new skill. Maybe it's learning to be a fitness instructor. So they have retreats now where you go and maybe it was, 6 different weekends to get X, Y, and Z certification. And now you go away for a week or two at a retreat like environment where you're also taking classes to get a specific fitness or yoga or Pilates certification. There's also fitness business retreats. There are lots of different types of business retreats, but I personally hosted fitness business retreats. So it's kind of like fitness meets business school that's industry specific, which is a lot of fun. And then also community focused retreats. So we talked about a studio hosting a weekend retreat. I've worked with a studio that every year they host a beach retreat. And anyone that's a member of their studio is welcome to go. Obviously, they pay for it, but they rent out a beach house or two and have fitness activities all weekend long, but then other activities too that people that love fitness might like taking a cooking class or going on a walk on the beach or a sandcastle building class, things like that. There are also adventure retreats, which sound really fun to me. I have not been on one of those. And then also things like a meditation retreat. So many different options. We're not bound by kind of that traditional idea anymore, especially because there's so many options for how to put on a retreat and where to host a retreat.
Lauren, you gave us so many different options, more than I could ever dream of. That was amazing. For me, and I'm hoping for the rest of our FBP family out there, my wheels started turning. But I think out of all the options that you gave, the one that I thought was most unique was the results driven retreat. I thought that was
Yes.
creative and very unique.
Yes, it is. And they're becoming, I think, more and more common, almost for the reason, like you said, for self care, is sometimes it's hard to take time out of your busy day to really accomplish that specific goal without getting sidetracked, right? So having that time really set away with no outside distractions, hopefully, if you can pull that off, it can be a great way to, accomplish something new or at least to get yourself really started on the right track to accomplishing your goal.
Well, I live here at the beach, and I will say I see retreats all the time taking place, usually down at the beach.
Yes.
There's writers' retreats, but I have seen the fitness activity retreats where a bunch of ladies will say, "Oh, we're just here for the weekend. We're going to kayak and paddle board and do some of the trails that are around." So I have witnessed some of those here where I live. Pretty
Exactly. And I think those are really picking up in popularity as well because it's planned for you. It's like a plan for you vacation of your favorite things, right?
What are some of the logistical items to consider when picking a location and planning your retreat? You kind of talked, okay, here's the idea, here's the topic. Let's talk about the logistics behind it.
Sure. So I think one of the very first things that you need to ask yourself, really, when you are starting to plan your retreat and then definitely picking that location, is would a retreat of any kind, and then narrow into location, appeal to your current audience or your target market? So in business, we always say it's much easier to fill a need than it is to create a need. And so you definitely want to do a little bit of market research, feel out your people and make sure it's something that they're interested in. And then if that's a yes, then you need to ask yourself what potential geographical locations would appeal to your target market, right? And then are you planning to host in a resort, in a private venue like an Airbnb or a VRBO, which I know you're supposed to say Verbo, but I just can't do it. I always say VRBO. Or even now there are retreat specific centers that you can rent out that they're like built to host these things. Other things to consider is, does your location provide catering? That can be a huge deal. Maybe you want to bring in your own food. That's just another logistical thing that you have to plan, but it might save you money. Does your event space have AV, especially if you're going to be doing any kind of business retreat or something where you'll need a PowerPoint or music or a microphone? Are there event spaces? So obviously you need rooms, but then you need somewhere to host the events or the classes that you're going to be hosting as well. And then a big one is, how easily can your potential guest travel to your retreat location? So is there an airport nearby? Which, the more kind of remote your location is, obviously that could be really amazing experience, but are people willing to kind of go the distance literally? Does the host site provide a shuttle? And then thinking about, where are the majority of your people going to be traveling from? And then how expensive would that trip be? Because when you're doing your budget, you need to think, okay, not only are they now paying for the retreat, but they're going to buy a plane ticket potentially on top of that. So is that, kind of within the threshold that your target market can handle and would be willing to pay? And then also you want to consider planning into your retreat. This kind of gets into an itinerary topic, but it's important when you're thinking about location as well. People want to have downtime to go do their own thing on a retreat, right? So are there things in the surrounding area that would appeal to your ideal customer? Are they easy to access? Is it easy to get to if they don't have a car? Because they will want to go out and do things on their own, or potentially come early and stay late, which helps with your hotel room block. So those are always good things.
I love the component about the food.
Yes.
And we laugh about food, but I feel like if I would choose to go on a fitness retreat, for me, like, I would want all that yummy, delicious, healthy, clean food.
100%. And I love great food, but just using myself as an example, I am not one to spend like a ton of time when I'm just going on a personal vacation researching restaurants ahead of time. So like having that provided for me personally, and for a lot of people, is huge, right? Because they're excited about trying new things, going to a new place, maybe eating the local food, and having it just ready for them, right? A retreat is about relaxation and making it easy. So food can definitely play a big factor, and something that needs to be really taking to consideration when you're planning your retreats.
Yeah, you mentioned about catering, and I think that's a huge piece. And how fun would it be to pair with a local farm to table type style caterer or restaurant? Great idea.
Exactly. Yes.
All right, so we have like the idea that, okay, we're going to do this. Then we have our topic. We picked what topic that we're going to type style of retreat that we're going to host. We've got the location. Let's talk about, and you mentioned a little bit about cost.
Yes.
If I'm the person planning the event, how do I figure out how much it's going to cost to host the retreat, and then fee for the participant, the charge for the participant?
Right, exactly. And I think it's really important to work backwards from your budget to your ticket price, keeping in mind that threshold of how much would your target market really be willing to pay, right? So things to consider when you are budgeting, because there are going to be fixed costs that no matter how many people attend, right, you're going to have this amount of cost. And then there are variable costs. So the more people that attend, the higher the cost. But hopefully, a lot of times with variable costs, it's kind of a reverse effect. The more people you have, then the less it is per person, right? And so that's where you can really start to generate more revenue there. So a couple of things to consider when budgeting. The very biggest one that I think is usually the biggest piece of a lot of people's budget is actually catering, especially if you are catering the majority of their meals. So a lot of resorts, hotels, retreat spaces, they will actually give you the event space for, I'm doing air quotes here, free, if you meet certain F&B minimums. So F&B minimums mean food and beverage minimum. So let's say if you use their catering services for $3,500 or $10,000, depending on how big your retreat is and obviously where the location is, then they will give you X amount of event space, kind of free or gratis, if you will. But that can really add up because you have to agree to that F&B minimum most of the time before you know exactly how many people you're going to have. So you need to really think, okay, if my F&B minimum is X, I'm going to need at least how many people, looking at the catering menu and thinking through, okay, I'm going to try to cover 2 meals or 3 meals. And then you can kind of start to sketch out how many people you would need to at least meet that minimum so you don't end up paying rent for the event spaces. But take note, please, because this definitely got us on our first retreat, how much hotels and resorts charge for fees. So there will be catering fees, there will be sales tax fees, there'll be hotel fees, there'll be a bartender fee, which honestly you should probably budget at least 20 to 30% on top of your F&B minimum for just fees at the resort. So that's going to be a huge piece of your budget. The next biggest piece of your budget is most likely going to be your room block. So some hotels and resorts will give you a room block, obviously to advertise as a discount to your potential attendees, assuming that you're having them pay for the hotel separately, which that kind of a lot of times is standard depending on the type of retreat. If you're in a retreat event space where it's designated for that, sometimes that cost is rolled in. And if it is rolling in, then obviously your ticket price is going to be higher. But some hotels, if you don't fill all of your block, you're responsible for it. So you're charged back for it. So if you had 20 rooms, right, for 3-night minimum at, let's just say $150, and you left 5 of those empty, 5 times 3 nights times $150, that probably just ate into your profit quite a bit. Now, some hotels and resorts, you can negotiate no room block minimum, but they will probably let your block go, meaning they are not going to guarantee that rate or those rooms further ahead of your retreat date. So if you're responsible for the block, they're probably going to keep those rooms reserved off for you until the day of the retreat. But if you're not responsible for that block, then 3 weeks before your retreat, whatever rooms aren't filled from your block, they will probably open up. So then you run the risk potentially of, people not having a room or not being able to get the discounted price. Probably okay there. I would opt for not being responsible for the room block, but things to consider for sure. And then also make sure you price out your AV, or better yet, ask if you can bring it in yourself, because AV is crazy expensive at hotels and resorts. And some will let you bring it in yourself and some won't. And then one last consideration is look at the peak time for that location and that resort or hotel space. If you could go on what they call the fringe date, so like right outside of peak time or in the off season, if it's still appealing, that could save you so much money, which you could then, pass on to your retreat attendees by lowering the cost, which might increase how many people come to your retreat.
Okay, Lauren, before I go to the last question,
Yes.
I want to ask you a question, but I want to make sure you have an answer, because I didn't want to ask you and put you on the spot.
Oh, sure.
I'd like to ask you about if an instructor wants to put on a retreat, is there an answer, like how much profit should they make? Or could we answer it in a way of maybe obviously the more you do it, your profits will increase?
Yep, I could definitely say that. And I mean, it's hard. It's just hard to say because there's so much variability in location and, how much the place is going to charge, and then also what people think is a profit. I could definitely say that you want to consider the time that you spend planning the retreat, like those hours, and think about them like billable hours and how much profit you're going to make. And then also say the more you can control your fixed cost, then the more you will be able to make.
Okay.
What do you think?
I
I
just
just don't know that there's like a number I could reasonably say.
Okay. I didn't know if you're like, well, you should be able to walk away with a 10% profit. But if you don't have a number, I'd rather you not. I'd rather we
Yeah,
kind of answer it. We can kind of skirt around it a little bit.
right.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a question. Keep it just really simple. Don't go on. You know what I mean? Let's just
Yep.
address it, and then I'm going to go into our last question. Okay.
Okay.
All of the FVP family out there listening probably want to know, what kind of profit can I make from hosting these retreats? And I know it's probably a hard question to answer. It's not like you can say, oh, expect to make 10%. And it's probably another thing where the more you do it, you probably get savvier at avoiding charges that you weren't expecting. What's your thoughts on profit for an instructor? What could they expect?
That is a tough question, but I will say that it is definitely possible to make a profit. You want to think through, maybe how could you strategically use partnerships to control or help control your variable costs, so cost per person, but also your fixed costs. So maybe that means partnering with a location that you could then do some advertising for or teach classes for in addition. So the more that you can either partner with the location or maybe bring in some sponsors that can help increase your profit. You're totally right. The more you do it, the more streamlined your process will be. So you're more likely to bring in more retreat attendees. And then you also want to make sure that you're considering the hours you log planning, and what is your kind of opportunity cost? What could you have made had you been doing something else during those hours? And when you're considering your profit margin, consider those to make sure it is something that you want to do over and over again, because time is precious and time is money.
I feel in the long run, when you look at this, if you're a fit pro, you really could put a amazing value on the fact that it's retention.
It
It
is
right. You're
huge.
you're building a better relationship with maybe people that are following you back home at your boutique, or if you have an online coaching business or something along those lines. So I almost feel like there is a priceless factor to hosting a retreat that's not money.
Without a doubt. And that's honestly why we've been lucky enough to turn a profit. Why we continue to host our retreat is it really is about, having that in-person experience, building that camaraderie, building that brand loyalty. So I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's one of the most important factors to consider.
Last component to planning and hosting a fitness retreat is the marketing.
Yes.
Ideas, thoughts that you can share with all of our FVP family on that.
Yes. So number one is retreats are going to be a larger ticket item, right? So they're going to require people to potentially take off work, to make arrangements for childcare, and then maybe to save up for the retreat itself. So you need to give it a long lead time. I would suggest to begin teasing the retreat at least 6 to 9 months out. If not, have the date of your next retreat when you host your first one, if it's an annual thing, so people can, save the date. You also, in your marketing materials, really want to establish your deliverables and spell them out really clearly in your marketing material. So, what is included in the ticket price, lodging, meals, spa services, classes, guided excursions. And now, while I say you want to spell it out clearly, don't forget to focus on how people will feel, what they will emotionally get out of the retreat as well. That's really important. People tend to make buying decisions with their emotions, right? So you want it to be clear what they get, but also how they're going to feel when they leave. And then also consider really creative deliverables. So, yes, yoga in a beautiful location is awesome, but what else could you add on to help your retreat stand out above and beyond the next yoga retreat in a beautiful location? And then we mentioned partnering is a great way to help your budget, but it can also be a great way to cross promote, especially with other people in your industry or in your area that have the same target market, right? So you can maybe have them as a sponsor or as a partner. They advertise your retreat to their group of people or their audience, and then you advertise whatever their service is to your audience. So let's just take a really easy example. A certain yoga mat company, maybe they donate all of the yoga mats for your retreat. People get a yoga mat from their company, so it's in their welcome bag. And then maybe they include information about your retreat in their monthly newsletter to all of their customers. So great way to cross promote, also great way to help with your costs.
Lauren, I'm just going to say this. Great advice today. Great tips today. Great topic. Thank you so much for coming on to the Fitness Business Podcast and sharing your valuable information with all of our FPP family.
It has been such an honor, and we did create a retreat planning checklist just for the Fitness Business Podcast community. So we will have the link to that in the show notes. So if I said things too quickly, you have it all written down. But it has been a pleasure, Dory. Thank you so much for having me.
Perfect. We're done.
Okay.
Thanks for getting that little piece in at the last second.
Oh, yes, I totally forgot.
Yeah, that was good.